Hello, welcome to this new Hessian Scrum special. Today, joining me is an absolute legend of the New York death metal movement, a less popular band, but one that is just as essential as any other. Robert Yench from Death Metal Masters Morpheus Descends. Hello, Robert.
Hello, how you doing, bud?
I'm great, and you?
Doing very well.
All right, so let's get started. You came out with a small, like a huge blast. You didn't get quite as much attention as everyone else in the scene. But what I found really curious with your music, where where a lot of the New York bands had moved on to like very different things, you still had a huge kind of admiration for Black Sabbath in your music.
Very much. I think when you talk about the original members and what really moved us, definitely, like what did we listen to while we were traveling, just hanging out? It would definitely be, a lot of Sabbath, and definitely that influence comes over, basically, the things that influenced us was just hearing the other bands of that late 80s transfer over to death metal and, doing something much heavier, and just hearing that and knowing that, for us, that was the right fit, is to just try to play something, really heavy, because that was like kind of around a time when thrash was dying out. Some of us did play in some like thrash metal bands prior to Morpheus forming, and it was like, as soon as a couple of us got together, started talking about, early death metal bands, like Morbid Angel, Death, Obituary, Necrophagy, and stuff like that. We just knew that we had to quit our other bands and do a death metal band.
It's funny you say that, because you guys have the kind of pounding, very rhythmic chugging guitars. You've got the deep vocals, the technical riffs, the blasting. In many ways, someone who's less experienced with death metal could confuse you with, a lot of those kind of brutal death metal bands inspired by Suffocation. But you were so unique and creative. I mean, why was that? Why was that in with a bunch of presets, if you know what I mean?
Well, I think all of those bands in the New York, New Jersey scene, we were all friends with all of them. I mean, Suffocation. I mean, I used to live in upstate New York, about an hour outside of New York City, and those guys were from Long Island. Almost every weekend for probably about a year, like, we would all get together and be hanging out, partying, jamming, and stuff like that. So, I mean, we were always friends with those guys. And, Immolation and Incantation, Mortician stuff. And I think the key thing for us is we always kind of wanted to do our own thing, and we saw like a lot of bands start chasing like the Suffocation sound and stuff like that. And to us, we wanted to not be looped in with all of those Suffolk clones. We wanted to have our own music that defined us.
Personally, I think you succeeded really well. And one thing you added, quite a lot. I've noticed there are, a few literary references in your book, in your music, from the Brian Lumley's Necroscope series. And there's a lot of kind of some of the, the melodies you use in your music remind me a lot of the kind of 70s, 80s Italian horror film music. And obviously, the samples. So
yeah, absolutely. You're hitting all the right buttons there when you're talking about it. Again, expressed love for 70s and 80s horror movies, and particularly like Italian horror flicks and Spanish flicks, and on the EP, A Chronicles of the Shadowed Ones, we even took our own stab at that with the fifth track, Mofo de Alde Frank, which it really means in the land of Firenze, which is, deals with the whole Lumley thing. But it was our first and only shot at kind of doing our own ambient soundscape, and I think at the time it was very different composure-wise than any other band was kind of trying to do at the time.
Yeah, one thing that's always really impressed me with your music is that when you guys do the chugging parts, right? You do them in such a way that it doesn't remind me of any other band, because when I hear, kind of like slow chugging part with like weird chords, weird notes, I think Immolation, or the really slow stuff, I think Incantation, a lot of bands. But then, you have your really unique way of doing it, but no one's ever really copied it from.
Yeah, sometimes I'll hear from particular people who say, "Oh, this band sounds like you." I'm like, I don't hear it. I think for us, when we were writing riffs and doing something, we would be the first ones to say, like, that sounds too much like an Immolation riff. We can't use that. Or, that sounds like this part in Incantation song. That's not what we're about. Let's change that.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? I've got a hard question for you.
Sure.
This is something I've heard quite a few from a lot of old school guys, but I've seen a lot of people say that Cannibal Corpse took your style and made it more palatable, easier to digest for a larger crowd.
Well, I guess I wouldn't say they stole us, but we definitely had a relationship with them in the early days. In fact, Chris Barnes and Rob Rousset were the ones that were the standout guys that we always talked to on the phone. And if they were playing downstate, we would go see them. If, we were upstate, we'd go hang. They had us come play up there with them, Gorguts, Disharmonic Orchestra, some really cool shows and stuff. And but when you get into the sound thing, I think definitely they dug us and we dug them, and they were getting starting to become very popular and stuff. And I don't know. I think when Eaten Back to Life came out, and I saw the little skeleton baby on the back, and to me, that's kind of what I started getting maybe an indication that that perhaps maybe we influenced somebody over on that end into some ideas. Because if you look at our Accelerated Decrepitude demo from October 90, it's pretty much almost the same baby, except for it's hanging upside down. And it's funny because if you look at some of the old pictures of Cannibal Corpse, like that's the shirts that Chris and Rob are wearing.
Interesting, because a lot of people agree that the cover art for Ritual of Infinity is one of the greatest looking death metal cover arts of all time, because it's a beautiful painting and it's so abstract. Was it done by a refined artist, or how did that come about?
It was done by an artist, Brad Moore, who actually does all the album covers for the band Argus. If you ever heard them, they're kind of like a power metal band.
Yes, I know.
And he did Organic Infest and a few other ones. He's from like the Illinois area, and he also does comic books and stuff. And he's a very abstract kind of painter. And his use of color, I think, is really like his greatness. The sickly colors and everything. But to be truly honest, I have to say that when we first saw the cover, we kind of looked at it and we had given him this description of the first Lumley book in the Necroscope, and I guess it's always hard to have an artist bring back that vision of what you see in your mind's eye. And when we looked at it, I was just like, oh, this isn't what I was expecting. But it grew on me very quickly. And looking back, I'm glad that we used that piece of artwork,
Yeah.
But I can appreciate everybody liking it because it is different than a lot of other art or whatever, But I also still have the original artwork framed in my house too.
You've never shared it?
No, I never did. No, it's funny is I actually had a party at my place a couple of years ago, and I had a bunch of out of town guys stay at the house, let everybody sleep on the floor, instead of getting hotels. And a couple of the dudes were shitting because I had the Ritual Infinity cover there, like framed over like the fireplace, without like the logo or anything on it, just the original artwork.
One thing I'm curious about as well is, the first song, The Way of All Flesh.
Hellraiser. It was influenced by Hellraiser.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I thought it was something to do with Samuel Butler for a while.
Yeah, it was totally, you got to remember Way of All Flesh. We probably wrote that song in 1992, maybe 91. So it was probably, from what I could recall, it was pretty much a Hellraiser kind of nod, a tilt, a nod to that.
Like your cover art, some of your lyrics are very abstract and can be taken like in many different ways.
Sam, our drummer, is the one who wrote primarily all of the lyrics. But when we come to the titles, a lot of times I'll come up with the song title. Sometimes even that spurs the topic, or the idea. It's really weird. We like to spitball ideas, and we'll throw a title on the wall, and maybe a couple of months later, the title slightly changes, and then all of a sudden, Sam's running with the ball with the lyrics, and all of a sudden it gels and solidifies, and it is what it is,
I can see that. And, also the band title, because you were in another band called Morpheus, and then you became Morpheus Descends. I mean, that has to be a reference to A Midsummer's Night Dream by Shakespeare.
It is, but the literary side of me wants to go, yes, it is, of course, But truthfully, it's probably more influenced from Neil Gaiman's comic book graphic novel, The Sandman.
Oh, I see.
And Morpheus is the god of sleep. And it was kind of like the Morpheus Descends thing was kind of like, that like the sleep descending upon everybody,
Yeah, I can.
But there's a little story behind that too. So we were Morpheus, and we did the record with JL America, and they were using the best distributor in the United States at the time. It was Relativity Distribution. And this meant getting into not only all the mom and pop shops, but all the chain stores as well. And they got a call. They had a techno band with the same name, but a different spelling. And were threatening to the label to not distribute the record because it would be confusing. Of course, I fought pretty hard during that process, trying to explain that, different spelling names could work out fine, and they're both two splintered genres where the consumer knows what they're buying, but who the fuck listens to me, So out of the proposition of not being distributed in the record, not really being released the way that we wanted to be released, we said, well, what can we do? And we decided to go with the Descends part onto it. And then I redrew the logo and sent it to the record company, and we were Morpheus Descends.
Yeah, I mean, some of these management and record label people from the 90s, you hear all kinds of weird horror stories.
Yes.
And
as a young fledgling band, and they're ready to take 10,000 CDs and they want 7,000 cassettes to distribute, but we're not going to do it if you stay with that name.
My God. I mean,
so, it was a hard thing for us. It was probably the first time we got slapped in the face with the dick of the music business. It's just like, well, here's the business, smack you, and how are you going to react to it? Do you pick up your toys and go home? Do you start from scratch? Do you stick to your guns? these days, in retrospect, I'd stick to my guns because we all know now with all this that all of that shit doesn't matter. You could have Entombed AD, and Nocturnus AD, and everybody just comes up with a variation. We all know who those people are, and even in multi-genres, you even have in metal now, you have these new bands that take a band from a band's name in the 90s. It's like, dude, you can't call yourself that.
Yeah, well, like you said earlier, you never wanted to sound like anyone else. But a lot of these, modern death metal bands just kind of sound like we took a bit of this, we took a bit of that, and we mixed it up.
You're absolutely right, Nick. I think the big difference is we write and wrote music for ourselves first. I think when you become an artist that tries to make music that you're trying to make that everybody likes, I think you're doomed to fail when it comes to originality.
You or any of the other guys listen to death metal today, or like not 90s bands, but stuff that came out in the last couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. I'm an avid music listener.
Yeah.
Like there's bands that come out all the time that I'm into, but by the same token, there's a lot that I don't like, and I've really subscribed to the if I don't have anything good to say, I don't say it anymore.
Look, don't worry. We've had past guests, talk badly about some bands. No. Most people listening to this don't tend to get offended. So
yeah. I'm sure if you ever did an interview with King Fowley, it's like there's no stops. He's going to tell it like it is. Or I try to keep the focus on us and not really get caught up in maybe telling everybody the whole honest truth,
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, even in the early 90s, though, every band having a name like Shun, it was ridiculous. You had Apparition, Suffocation, Immolation, Mortician, and then you had these other ones, Retribution, Regurgitation, blah, blah. I was like, oh my God, you have to have the Shun in your name to be in death metal now.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays, I've seen much worse, though. I think I've seen bands called Chapel of Ghouls, literally.
Oh, I know. Oh, God. There's no accounting for good taste anymore, I think,
Was this a coincidence? But, Gojira, this kind of big popular French band, had an album called The Way of All Flesh. And, they were into death metal when they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
Were they ever inspired by you, or?
I'm sure they'll never admit it. Yeah, another interesting story, and I wouldn't say it's so much as a rip-off, but you ever heard of James Murphy's band Disincarnate?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was the same kind of thing. I got a letter from him one day, pre-email, life. And it was like, hey, it's James, I really dig you guys, this is when we were still Morpheus, I really dig you guys, dig what you're doing and stuff. And, I think he bought a t-shirt, a demo or something like that, And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool, man, So I think maybe a year or two, maybe a year went by, and then I got a message from, it's like, yeah, I got a band Disincarnate, and we're going to do Lumley songs, and we've got a song about the Neil Gaiman Sandman and stuff. And I was just like, holy shit. When you talk hey, I liked your lyrical ideas so much that I'm going to form a band or my record has all the same topics on it. I don't know that if he meant to just share it, hey, isn't that cool? But, I kind of got the douche chills a little.
Beyond the Flesh. That's one of the song titles I remember.
Yeah, and it was they were literally Necroscope lyrics. And me and Sam were looking at each other what the fuck? I mean, we don't own the franchise on it, but, it's but, having said that, we did play with Disincarnate and Cancer on that tour. I think it was in '94. And we got to play with them and stuff. And he asked me what I thought and stuff, and we talked about it and stuff. And it was all good. Even Gorguts, another great story that the guys, the old timers in the band laugh about. So we have a song called "Proclaim Creator," and it's a song about the Reanimator, Herbert West, and it has the sound sample in it and everything.
Yeah.
So one time in Buffalo, when we were hanging out with Cannibal Corpse and Gorguts and them, we were playing like the recording of it, and we were talking about the movie Reanimator.
Mm.
And Luke is like, "What is this movie? What are you talking about?" And we explained to him, everything. And the next album came out with their flesh he'll create.
Oh yes, I remember that. That's the first song on what's it called? Erosion of Sanity.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we got to play a show with them shortly after the album came out. And as soon as me and Sam and our bass player walked up to Luke, he goes, "What did you guys think of my Reanimator song?" And I was like, I'm like, at least you didn't use the same sample from the. But yeah, I think that's what we started realizing that, that maybe we were giving other people ideas or whatever,
Yeah.
And I mean, in flattery, imitation is, highest form of flattery. So I wouldn't be like, "Oh, you guys are stealing my stuff," because, we're all influenced by everything. But, sometimes those things come a little close to the edges,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. I mean,
like it was like, "What did you think of my version?" I was just like, "Holy shit, dude! At least you're not hiding it." I'll give him that. He didn't hide it.
Nice stuff.
But I have to say that the Butchered at Birth artwork with the baby and everything definitely made some of us in the band feel like some of our ideas were lifted. And another interesting story about Cannibal Corpse, when Rob Rousset left the band or was kicked out, or depending on who you talk to, we immediately reached out to him because we were looking for another guitar player. And there was a short window there for a little while that Rob Rousset was going to end up playing guitar at Morpheus.
oh damn! And it never happened.
Yeah, so that would have been pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, it would have been very good guitarist as well.
Yes, I always liked his guitar playing. Now he's like a golf pro and everything. But good for him, man. I think at the time, like leaving Cannibal Corpse and getting with another band, up and coming band, just wasn't where his head was at. So he needed to do something else. I don't blame him.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of you 90s death metal guys, I don't, maybe it's that initial death metal drive, but I get the impression, either ends really badly, unfortunately, or you guys end up doing something crazy with your lives. There's no in between.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I know for me, playing this genre of music, to me, is like being a heroin addict. I can't, not that I am a heroin addict, but I mean, this music's like a drug for me and some of my friends. Like, I put it down, I try to put it down, and the next thing you know, I'm doing it again. Yeah, that's it. Like, I could never stop thinking about Morpheus and wanting to keep it moving, and playing music. I mean, music is such a huge part of my life that even over this whole COVID thing, which I'm sure it sucks over there where you're at too.
Yeah.
Over here, it sucks big time too. We haven't really been able to be in touch with everybody. So basically, over the last 2 years, I learned how to play drums. So I'm playing drums now.
Well, my God, that's pretty impressive. 2 years.
Yeah, like it was just nothing to do and being locked in. So now I'm playing drums in a band now. Finally, because the only way to really get it going is to kind of get into something organized where you're practicing every week and stuff. And I'm digging it, So if anything good came out of this slump, it's that I learned how to play drums, but. What you say about what happens to us old guys, You know, it's like, I don't think I'll ever stop, you know, maybe I'll stop like when I stroke out and I got two fidgety fucking arms or something. Can't hold the guitar or play instruments, but until then, I'll probably still be jamming. Right now, I even work with a good number of bands. You know, I have another band that I do called Mausoleum, and it's just like kind of autopsy worship. You know, severed survival meets like, you know, necrophagia.
Yes.
You know, and I look around and I say, holy shit, I've been doing this band now for 20 years. Started it, you know, pretty much started that band in like 2000, 2001. I'm like, holy shit, you know, this band's like 20 years old. But what I get to is I jam with those guys 2 nights a week. And I play drums in the other band a night a week, you know, with work and family and everything. It's like my sanity is playing. You know, if you cut that out of my life, I'd probably, I don't know, maybe be a hardcore alcoholic or something.
And you know, one thing you did really, really well, which, you know, no one really noticed, but I remember I'm not sure if this is true, but this is what I think. Did you write the lyrics on the Infernal Storm by Incantation? Because I know you played with them for a while. Yes, I knew it.
I did. Same thing with that. Morpheus basically was running out of steam in like 96, 97. I felt like I really had to do something different, get out of that situation. So I was always friends with John and Kyle for a long time. They needed a bass player. So in 97, I joined the band, and we started right away doing it. I joined right as Diabolical Conquest came out. So I did all the touring for that with like Morbid Angel and Chrysian, and a lot of other fun bands, you know, and had a really good time doing that. You know, when it came time to write the record, Kyle had left. So we brought in our friend Dave Colross, who had played with Suffocation. Me and John pretty much, you know, wrote the album, you know, and there was this duty of coming up with the lyrics, and I had always written some poetry and some ideas and stuff that I had always had, and I felt like I had a good Luciferian kind of approach to lyrics that I thought I could kind of bring over into the band, and John agreed, and I wrote a bunch of lyrics.
How does it, you know, feel to work with like, you know, a band like Incantation, you know, which is a full-on kind of a career death metal band at this point, you know, compared to Morpheus Descends?
It was fun, and I enjoyed it, but I think like, and I could say the same for this with Sam. He also plays drums for Mortician live. He's been their live drummer for, I don't know, like 12 years now. And he's also filled in for Incantation on drums. And he also played with Rob Dukes from Exodus. He had a band called Generation Kill, played drums for that for a while. But I guess where I'm going with that, Nick, is even though Sam and I can play at more successful or better known bands, I think our hearts always lie with Morpheus, and we always come back to it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, it's our true love. It's our true devotion. You know? I don't think we love those bands as much as we do this. You know, like we always say, like, this is the baby, you know? It's like, you got to take care of the baby. Well, some guys like to starve out the band. You know, you get a guy in a band who disappears for like 6 months, nobody hears nothing from him. You know, that you're never going to progress like that. You know? It's like some people are 1 foot in, 1 foot out at times. You know? It's like you just have to be in it full time, full speed ahead.
All right. So what do you have from, you know, we spoke about this in private, but I think, you know, if you're willing to talk about this, is there anything you want to tell, you know, what's going on with Morpheus Descends at the moment? Because your marks are active on the internet.
Yeah. I mean, believe it or not, we are active. The COVID thing has really kind of bumped things up for us. Me and Adam Kegg, our other guitar players, we live in the Pittsburgh area, in Pennsylvania, which is probably about 300 miles from where the band practices.
Mm.
And Sam, our drummer, where we practice at his place, he also works in the medical industry, and he's been extremely busy with this COVID thing. So he's been working crazy hours and lots of overtime. There's been it's been very hard to travel and stuff like that. So, for almost the last 2 years, we haven't made a lot of progress, which is a huge bummer for me. So what I've done in the meantime is my locally based band Mausoleum, we were able to record an EP with Autopsy and put that out, and we just recorded, and we're working on the mix of another full length. But it kills me that we have these 2 fully completed albums written for Morpheus. We spent the last 3 or 4 years just writing material, and it ended up being, we were so inspired and so pleased with the writing process to have us all back in the room again, doing it the way that we did 30 years ago. And just Sam writes riffs too, and you would write a riff, and I'm like, damn, that kicks ass, and I just add another riff to that. Just the whole sharing and creating process went extremely well. So we've got these 22 songs written. And then this COVID thing hit, and now we've just been in a holding pattern where the band hasn't been doing anything. And it's been extremely disappointing for me. Just shoot, but I think I'm just at the mercy of the situation.
Let's hope it ends soon. So because I'd be very interested to hear, because that's another question. Because unlike a lot of your peers, you never fell into the cycle of releasing an album every 1 or 2 years, taking a 3 or 4 year break sometime in the 2000s, then starting again. Do you think that has kind of preserved your passion for death metal? Possibly.
I see where you're going with that. I haven't shot my load yet, so it's there's, I still feel I've got more to offer, I think my best songwriting is yet to come. And I think with these 2 Morpheus records, I think that people will be really, really astonished at what it sounds like. And I would love to be able to tease you or give you a little piece to listen to. But, it probably just isn't good business. It's probably just not a good move on my part to share anything.
Yeah. We'd all love to hear it, to be honest.
But I'm telling you, dude, you would fucking love it. I don't know. To me, it sounds like it's a more mature songwriting approach, but man, you hear some of these riffs and it sounds like Corpse. It has that Corpse Under Glass feel, or it sounds on like something you'd hear from Ritual of Infinity.
One thing I think that's very difficult with all your songs, that you have, the Autopsy demo and everything, is that you guys don't really tend to repeat parts, where,
yep. That's the secret of the sauce right there.
Because a lot of bands were like, when they introduce new riffs, it's a twisted form of a previous riff, and I think the only time you guys ever do something where it's like, okay, I reckon that you already played this riff before, is on what's it called again? I think Corpse on the Glass, where you kind of have like that power chord riffs, and then it goes to the really kind of very chuggy, dun 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 dun. But you play it slow at first. Like that's the only time you guys ever have like some kind of familiar idea reintroduced into a song.
Yeah, again, it's like a private joke. Like we say, Morpheus album is like 2 other albums, like riff wise, because we'll play this riff for 4 count, and we'll play this riff for 8. And then we'll play this riff for, 8, and then we'll go to this riff, and this riff, and this riff. And we never go back to the same riff. And if you listen to a lot of the music, you'll see that we very rarely do anything in a chorus, verse chorus kind of structure.
You know, a lot of bands nowadays, you know, they'll kind of do that, except that there's no logic to it. You know, they'll have like some kind of part where it's like acoustic guitars, you know, a nice soprano vocal, death metal part. Then there's going to be like a flamenco part. How do you guys, you know, you play these very complex riffs. You've got different types of riffs. How do you make it coherent?
Like the process of riff writing, we maybe write between maybe Ken, our bass player, me and Sam, our drummer, who writes riffs too. Maybe the three of us will throw into a folder maybe 50 or 60 riffs that the three of us have written. And then what happens is we'll just keep listening to those riffs and start to sew things together, saying, well, this one sounds like a beginning riff. Or you start to go, you know what riff would really pair well with this? Start to kind of, these two riffs will go with this riff and stuff. Slowly they start to take shape, you know? Whereas I've been in other bands where, you know, it's been chorus versus chorus, write a song and an eight.
Personally, I don't believe the verse chorus approach has its place in extreme metal.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I think you guys managed to walk on like the razor thin line between, you know, being coherent and being absolutely random.
Yeah, like sometimes it'll be a riff that's kind of like it, but just a little different.
Yeah.
Like we like to do A and B variations and stuff, like just doing like the same thing over and over. Yeah, that's usually a hard one to pull off with the guys in the room, you know? They're like, usually it's like, what's next? Then what are we going to do?
Yeah. So do you guys? So you bring you write your riffs individually, but how do you assemble them? Do you assemble them together or?
Yeah, we'll put them all in a folder and like maybe, and I should say all of them. I mean, sometimes I'll write a song and I'll be like, hey man, I wrote a song, check it out. And, you know, they'll be like, you know, everybody will be like, cool, that's great. You know, and maybe it doesn't mean anything. Other times, maybe halfway through, we start putting in some other riffs that maybe one of the other guys would think that would really complement the composition. So, you know, I think all of us have always said, you know, like, don't bring your ego into the songwriting process. Because if you can't afford to have your feelings hurt, then, you know, you're probably not going to like writing music with us.
I could just imagine, you know, you hiring some young musician who comes and like, I wrote this song inspired by this band, and you telling him no.
Yeah, just be like, yeah, that's great and all, but
you know, like Ringo Starr and the Beatles, you know, no, we'll keep that idea on the wall. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Like, hold that thought. But I mean, I think the thing that kills me right now is knowing that we have all this material written, and just like that's my swan song, you know. I want to get that out, you know. It's so important to get those two records. So I'm just sitting here biding my time, playing drums in my little project and still recording in Mausoleum, waiting for the sign that all's clear for us to begin recording again with Morpheus. And also, like, you know, we get the offers to keep putting out like rituals and, you know, our old catalog, you know, and the reason that we kind of don't do that a lot is because we want to represent more than just our old catalog. Like, to us degree, sometimes we feel like that's just cashing in, even though we don't really cash in on having somebody, you know, repress it. You know?
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, if people want to say, I know, half a kebab each, if that's selling out, then, you know,
yeah,
good for you guys.
Yeah, no, but you know what I'd be like? I would say, you know, maybe in a year, I get, you know, 10 requests from Mexican labels, you know, 10 requests from Thailand labels from the Philippines and stuff. you know, and I would love to be able to accommodate everybody, but it would just really make me look like a media slut or something.
But honestly, I don't think you'd ever be selling out. I think Morpheus Descends is such a unique band. You've never kind of strayed from your vision, weakened your material. There really is a need for more Morpheus Descends.
Oh, I agree. And that's why it kills me to know that we have more unrecorded material waiting in the wings than we have recorded
material. Yeah, and one thing that I always loved in Morpheus Descends was the vocals. The vocals were always they were deep. They had the gargly, but there was power, there was anger, which is what a lot of bands tend to do nowadays. Is kind of it sounds like someone gurgling really low. There's no aggression. It's like, okay, cool. You can make a low sound with your mouth. Craig and
Jeff,
yes, that's it. Jeff Raymer, yes. Rest in peace. Poor soul. I was.
Yeah, we used to always say with Jeff, we wanted his voice to sound like you were dragging a big stone across the ground. just like you're dragging this huge monolith across the ground.
It reminds me of quite funny, when rappers in like their own songs, they brag about, how they're going to kill the listener and all that, a lot of aggression. And yeah. I love Jeff's voice, because it's, it's deep, but he's still pushing it out, from the bottom of his lungs, trying to get every piece of air out. And you can hear him at times. It's kind of like his voice gets tired briefly.
It does. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Definitely. It was like sang definitely from the gut, not the throat. So, it all came from the diaphragm. It wasn't just like in his mouth, just going, it's like, it was like cavernous coming from the bottom, the bowels of his, pit of his stomach.
I'd love to have heard him sing, on like a better mic, better equipment to really understand what he's doing, because, it sounds dumb, but most people nowadays can't do that stuff. There's no aggression to metal vocals anymore, unfortunately.
It's true. It's like, I think everybody's cooked it down into like a lowest common denominator type of sound. It's just like you said, there's not much creativity put into the voice anymore. It's just like get your singer go. You're like, okay, that's great. Let's go with it.
So as you said earlier about more Morpheus Descends, should we expect music in the same style, or are you going to try to expand from what you guys did before?
It's the same style. Absolutely. Anybody who's been a fan, if you heard the 2 new tracks that were on the from Black and Crypt's EP, 7-inch there,
Oozing from the Urn and the King's Curse, yeah.
That's a good indicator for what the new stuff sounds like, but I would say it's more furious and more sophisticated. Like the songwriting is there's some really good layering.
In the mid-90s, you got into black metal.
Yes, I still like black metal a lot. In fact, that drum project band that I play drums in, it's a black metal. Like with the whole black metal thing, like a lot of death metal dudes like totally hated on it, when it first came out. And like I've always been a fan of like the underground. So whether it was tape trading in the 80s or listening to, extreme death metal in the early 90s, by the mid 90s, I also ran a distribution. So I was trading merchandise for places like House of Kids and Nuclear Blast, Coffinus Records, a lot of just a bunch of different labels. So I was getting that product over here, and I listened to good many of it. And I was like, man, I fucking love this, man. It's played with heart. I could feel the seriousness in it.
Yeah.
especially at a time when death metal dudes are wearing sweatpants, doing athletic rock, I mean, like I said, I don't like to call out particular bands. But sometimes there's a thin borderline between death metal and almost cheesy hip hop style.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Dude, I fucking hate that shit, dude.
It reminds me, I saw this band in that style, right? I saw the drummer had literally had gold teeth, and the singer was wearing like an oversized basketball jersey, cap backwards. And then I was expecting like, damn, these guys look like they're about to, they're about to have women twerking, and it's just some guy going.
Yeah, it's just like I don't see anybody digging that 20 years from now.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the true test of music and music appreciation is the fact that that you even want to talk to a fucking schmuck like me about my music from 30 years ago.
Well, Morpheus Descends will always be remembered. I always consider them, a very interesting kind of like divergence from a lot of death metal that was never fully explored, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, we tried to be a little different. I mean, we really did try to go out of our way to not just be like the rest, especially as sometimes it almost seemed like a race, with some bands that do certain things. It was like once Suffocation really started having, it was like jump riffs.
Mm.
That's all anybody did around this. Jump. I'm like, man, there's more to death metal than chugging.
Yeah, but then I think the way you guys, you obviously had those rhythms, but you did them so well.
Well, I think Sam's unique drum style is what really takes those riffs and those parts and makes them different. It's just not doing that typical beat that all the other drummers do in those type of riffs.
When I listen to music, I tend to focus a bit too much on the guitars. I need to go back and listen to the drums.
Yeah, like in fact, when you talk about people talking about the band, I've read some stuff where people think we write the rhythms to the drums, and that the drums are the lead instrument.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very modern metal mentality. I've seen it where like, all right, here are the drum parts, write riffs on top, which makes sense.
I don't know how you would do that. Like that just seems like, I think the fun part of writing for me is when I write a riff, I hear a certain beat in my head, and then I'll toss it out there, and the drummer will just blow my mind and do something else. I'm like, fuck, that sounds even better. Like, I feel like I gave it such a limited view. And then when the drummer heard it, it's like, oh man, let's put this kind of beat to it.
I mean, but because you guys were always so, you always had a lot of variety in terms of rhythms, and rhythm was an important part.
Because all of us wrote the music.
Yeah.
Ken, the bass player wrote riffs, I wrote riffs, our drummer wrote riffs, and we would do the arrangements. It really was a group effort. It's not one guy locking himself in the studio and coming out and going, okay, I have the new Morpheus record.
I've seen a lot of bands give up melody, for pure rhythm, one note riffs. But was it always important for you guys to have the melody despite having the rhythms?
Yes. Yeah, like those hook riffs that I love melodies. Melodies are what you hum in your head. You don't hum the drum beats. Just stood my ground. But like, I'll give you an example. There's one particular Morpheus riff that a lot of people like to come up to me and say it's the Corpse Under Glass one. Like whatever it is about it, it's just a memorable introduction on a riff, a song. And a lot of people come up to me and they're just like, man, that opening riff just sets it off. Okay, cool.
My favorite riff is probably from Enthralled to Serve, one of the riffs in the middle.
In which one?
And Enthralled to Serve comes out.
Enthralled to Serve, yes.
Yeah, it comes out. It's like, I think it was like in the 2-minute mark. That's my favorite one you guys did. It's like really cool riff, like taken from, almost sounds like, you know, those Italian prog bands that did horror soundtracks, like Goblin and all that. That's a fantastic riff.
Yeah.
I mean, all of them are great.
Yeah, Claudia. I love all of that stuff. And when I'm at home, that's what I'm watching, you know, and chilling out too.
You know, so I think I'm going to go with my final question. Because you became a fan of black metal kind of later on. Will black metal ever be a part of Morpheus Descends?
No. It's not part of that vision. Like for me, when I want to play like sloppy death metal, I do my Mausoleum, because that's like Autopsy, deathish kind of, And when I want to play, anything towards like black metal wise, I also play in the band Typhus. That's founded by our bass player Andy. I don't know if Andy Newton, he lives out in Indiana, but I still help him with that. We did 2 albums.
Yeah,
it's got a reasonable amount of people who checked it out. So I need to call anyway.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you very much, Rob, for giving us your time.
Absolutely, thank you, and stay in touch.
You too. Thanks. We will definitely. Right, bye.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, take care.
You too. Bye.